Welcome to this programme, during which we are going to look at some of the highlights of the year, both on and off the railway. The videos are presented in chronological order, with as much information as possible given about dates, times and workings. The video is narrated by Stephen Marsh,
Nigel Fletcher and
Dan Cave.
We begin on a cold snowy 5th of January with 91114 departing Wakefield Westgate with 1A46 from Leeds to King's Cross. Sticking with the theme of snow, 5 days later, on the 10th of January, we see a rare shot of a 195 working the Leeds to Nottingley circuit, the first time that this has ever happened. 195010 is seen departing Pontefract Monk Hill with 2F62 from Nottingley to Leeds. Later that day, at Dock Hill's level crossing just outside Doncaster, 87002 is seen with 1Z87 from Edinburgh to King's Cross. Still in January, but a complete change of regions. On the 18th of January, we paid a visit to Tonbridge Yard. As always, there was a great variety of locomotives, courtesy of GBRF, starting with 66772 arriving into the yard. There were a number of 73s and 69s present, including 73119 painted into Dutch livery.
Couldn't have been there then, could it? No. Yeah.
Later that day, at Red Hill, we see some more classic Southern Region traction. 201001 is seen working a charter service, 1Z18 from Eastleigh to Hastings. The same evening, we see 377417 in the shadow of the Shard at London Bridge Station.
Brockley, Honorat Park, Forest Hill, Sydenham, Crystal Palace.
On the 19th of January, we see 375308 at Aylesford. The service was 2T30 from Strood to Paddock Wood. Note that the signal box still has Network Southeast branded signs. A few hours later, we stop off at Pilgrim's Way on the Channel Tunnel rail link, also known as HS1. This Class 373 passes at full speed with 9L29, the 1156 from Brussels to St Pancras. Heading in the opposite direction, this Class 374 is working 9024 from St Pancras to Paris Gare du Nord. Still on the 19th of January, and much further north, 37423 is seen at Great Yarmouth propelling into Vauxhall sidings. It had arrived with 5Z03 from Bishop's Lydyard on the West Somerset Railway. On the 20th of January, we visited a number of locations on the line between Ely and Peterborough. We begin the day at Chetisham, where we see 66522 and 66559 working 4L70 from Doncaster up Decoy to Felixstowe. The train had previously come from Tees Dock and was running top and tailed due to engineering works at Darlington, which took Darlington up loop out of action and left the train with nowhere to run round, meaning the train had to reverse. The remodelling work at Darlington produced some interesting diversions, which we will see later in this programme. These Class 175s are in store at Ely Papworth sidings. (66747) is seen at Second Drove with 4M29 from Felixstowe North to Birch Coppice. (69004) and 69006 are stabled at March Upyard. At Three Horseshoes, 66778 is seen working 4L11 from Masborough to Felixstowe North.
We move even further north to Doncaster. 66028, then recently repatriated from France, is seen as it took the Doncaster avoiding line, working 6D03 from Tinsley to Immingham. This is the only flow that these rather unusual BVA wagons can be seen on. Next, we move to Ashington on the 11th of February. 158842 is seen at the new Ashington station. 60056 is also seen at Ashington, working 6N61 from Tyne Coal Terminal to Linemouth Power Station. Little did we know at the time of filming, but this would be the last year of the Class 60s working for GB Rail Freight. One 58844 is then seen arriving ready to work 2T26 from Ashington back to Newcastle.
In March, we spent a couple of days exploring the Tyne and Wear Metro. We begin on the 7th of March at Bank Foot with this service from Newcastle Airport. The new Class 555 Stadler units were only in service during the week at this point, and, as this was a weekend, none of them were running. Later that evening, we visit Blaydon and see 66795 working 6S70 from Doncaster Down Decoy to Prestwich. The train had originated from Grain Oil Terminal and was an irregular runner. We start the 8th of March at Northumberland Park, where 4060 is seen with a service for St James in Newcastle. Later that morning, we see 6T087 on the Tyne Dock branch, working very hard up the steep gradient with 6N22 from Tyne Coal Terminal to Linemouth. Next, we move to Pelaw. 7817 is seen arriving into Pelaw with 6D43 from Jarrow to Lindsay. Unusually, this service was running on a Saturday. Engineering works south of Newcastle meant that this train could not take its regular route via the East Coast Main Line. Instead, 7817 had to run around its train and depart to the south via the Durham coast. Due to the length of the loop at Pelaw, the train was shorter than normal. Before 7817 could run around, 7802 is seen passing with 6S29 from Hunslet to Oxwell Mains. We see 7817 heading south after running around at Bolden Lane level crossing. North for our final shot of the day from the 8th of March. At Bedlington, 37409 and 37403 pass with a charter train, 1Z34 from Carlisle to Linlithgow. Due to the main line being blocked for the remodelling of Darlington, LNER services were being diverted along the Durham coast. At Seaton Carew on the 9th of March, we see 800-206 and 801-108 with 1E11, the 1030 from Edinburgh to King's Cross, passed by 1S13, the 10 o'clock King's Cross to Edinburgh with 801-106 and 800-201. This crane at Seaton-on-Tees can be seen looming out of the mist, creating a very strange scene. Later that afternoon, 43062 and 43013 are seen at Middlesbrough, working 1Q31 from Derby to Carlisle via Saltburn. Just around the corner, 158789 is seen running parallel to the A66 at Cargo Fleet, with 2N19 from Nunthorpe to Carlisle. Our last shot from the 9th of March is at North Allerton. 66539 is seen working 4N52 from Hartlepool PD ports to Willesden, conveying tunnel segments for HS2. This traffic ceased temporarily in June before recommencing later in the year. The next day at Nottingley, we are treated to this convoy, courtesy of West Coast Railways. 37706, 47847, 47843, 37685 and 37518 are seen working 6Z47 from Worksop to Carnforth Steamtown. The 47s were being moved for Carnforth as a source of spares. we return to Northallerton on the 16th of March. This football special is seen at Long Lane and comprised of 47812 and 47832 working 1Z47 from Newcastle to Wembley Central. This nighttime shot was taken at Askern on the 26th of March. 69004 is seen working 4L64 from Monk Breton to March. The end of 2025 and early 2026 saw a number of the Class 69 fleet being stored or reduced to shunting rolls only. In complete contrast, 66501 is seen in full sunshine near Nottingley South Junction on the 3rd of April, working 6Y23 from Healy Mills to Doncaster up Decoy. Clagging nicely, 66136 is seen near Askern working 6X06 from Doncaster up Decoy to York Engineers Yard. That was on the 8th of April. Still on the 8th of April, 69001 is seen at Moat Hills Level Crossing in Doncaster, working 0N71 from Doncaster up Decoy to Tyne Yard. This was yet another service with limited time remaining, with 2025 set to be the last full year that this service runs. On a very sunny 12th of April, we see 66733 passing through Mexborough Station and heading in the Doncaster direction, working 4S57 from Hams Hall to Moss End Euroterminal.
This is New Bilton on the outskirts of Rugby. The former quarry here is being filled with spoil which has been excavated from the new HS2 tunnels. The spoil is brought in by rail from Willesden. On the 15th of April, 66592 is seen as it worked one of these spoil trains, 6R93 from Willesden Euroterminal. Notice the grabs get to work almost immediately after the train has stopped. Back to the northeast for the next few shots. 68002 thrashes past Joan Croft, working 4N51 from Doncaster Eyeport to Tees Dock on the evening of the 17th of April. A little later, 70817 is seen at Bramwith Lane with 6D43 from Jarrow to Lindsay. There was a rather unusual visitor to Joan Croft on the 28th of April. 43047 and 43059 are seen on a shortened blue Pullman set, working 1Z44 from Inverness to Leicester. This set also ran again a few days later to Scotland.
We now visit Scotland for some HST action, starting on the 3rd of May at Balloch, just south of Inverness. 43179 and 43126 are seen near Journey's End, approaching Inverness with 1H11 from Glasgow Queen Street. A little further south again, at Faybury, we see the shortened blue Pullman HST set, with power cars 43047 and 43059 working 1Z44 from Ipswich to Inverness. following day, the set visited Kyle of Loch Alsh. This noise is from the jointed track on the far north line, taken on board 158720. We conclude the 3rd of May with 158720 leaving Dingwall with 2H76 from Tain to Inverness. (43059) and 43047 are seen at Garve on the 4th of May, working 1Z43 from Kyle to Inverness. On the 5th of May, we make the long journey back to England, but make a few stops along the way. At Carbridge, 37405 and 56049 are seen thrashing north, having been held south of the station, working 0Z90 from Grangemouth to Inverness to connect to snowplough. (43183), the highest numbered power car in the ScotRail fleet, and 43037 are seen working 1H09 from Edinburgh to Inverness near Dalwhinnie. This is Markle Level Crossing, which is now closed. 803001 is seen heading north with 1S95 from King's Cross to Edinburgh. The crossing has been replaced with an overbridge, and evidence of the building works can be seen here. The last shot from the 5th of May is at Chevington in Northumberland, where we see 88010 and 68002 working 4Z48 from Coatbridge to Daventry, diverted via the East Coast Main Line due to engineering works on the West Coast Main Line.
Now for a visit to the Chiltern Main Line on the 6th of May. We begin at Wormleighton with DVT 82304 plus Class 68 68013 working 1H41 from Moore Street to Marylebone. This would be the last full year of the Mark III coaches working on the Chiltern services. $59003 passes light with OM50 from Westbury down TC to Bescot. We move a little further south to Claydon for a trio of Class 70 workings. 70806 is seen first, working 6M40 from Westbury to Bescot. Next, 70015 is seen on 4099 from Leeds to Southampton. Due to the Freightliner and heavy haul split, this would be the last year of Class 70s working these intermodal trains. Finally, we see 70002 working 4M61 from Southampton to Trafford Park.
We return north the next day to Moat Hills outside Doncaster, where we firstly see 66224 working 4E25 from Bow to Heck. Followed by 37175 with 3Q47 from Doncaster up Decoy to Doncaster West Yard via Carnforth and Skipton. We returned to Northumberland on the 7th of June. At Crag Mill, 66713 is seen working 6D16 from Oxwell Mains to Doncaster Down Decoy. At Looker, 70009 on hire from Freightliner to Colas is seen working 6S29 from Hunslet to Oxwell Mains. .66536 is seen passing Pot Lane, working 6C66 from Wootton Bassett to Merehead.
On the 12th of June at Oakham, 66742 was captured on film, working 4L05 from Ditton to Felixstowe. This was followed by 40013, seen leaving Oakham Loop with OZ24 from Crewe to Sheringham for a visit to the North Norfolk Railway.
We returned to Scotland for our next few shots. Due to a shortage of traction, 37403 was drafted in to work the Aberdeen portion of the Caledonian Sleeper. On the night of the 13th of June, 37403 and 73968 are seen powering out of Dundee, working 1B16 from Aberdeen to London Euston as far as Edinburgh. We then spent a busy couple of days exploring Scotland. Starting on the 14th of June at Inchcoonans between Perth and Dundee, we catch 43144 and 43176, working 1T18 from Aberdeen to Glasgow Queen Street. climbing the significant grade at Camperdown, 43134 and 43031 leave Dundee on 1A35 from Glasgow Queen Street to Aberdeen. Hammering through Broughty Ferry, 43149 and 43035 are on 1A79 from Edinburgh to Aberdeen. This is Rosary Level Crossing near Keith, and we can see 43179 and 43143 with 1A26 from Inverness to Aberdeen. We begin the following day at Dingwall. 66746 is seen with the Royal Scotsman. This working was 1Z78 from Kyle to Boat of Garton. We then move to Aberdeen for another shot of 37403 and 73968, working 1B16 to London Euston. The pair are seen propelling into Aberdeen with the empty coaching stock. We then see the pair again, this time at Wellington Road in Aberdeen, just after the line crosses the River Dee. 91130 is seen propelling 1A04, the 605 from Leeds to King's Cross through Adwick on the 20th of June. Later that same day, we headed to the Keighley and Worth Valley Diesel Gala, where we see 37057 and 37508 heading to Oxenhope after leaving Haworth. On the 22nd of June, 70017 and 37508 are seen departing Oxenhope. On the 28th of June, at London King's Cross, we see 91130 and 82212 departing with 1D09 to Leeds. .33012 and 66754 are then seen arriving with 1Z15 from Fenchurch Street. This charter train was planned to visit every London terminus in one day and departed as 1Z16 to London Euston.
Back to the Chiltern main line again now. 70010 is seen on the down line at Nightcote as it worked 4M55 from Southampton to Lawley Street.
Next, we look abroad. Our first stop is Odense in Denmark, where Alpha Trains Vectron number 193412 heads westbound with a waste train from Malmö in Sweden to Duisburg in Germany. Dead in tow behind the Vectron are two Hexarail Class 241s, number 241009 and 241002, named Moneypenny and Skywalker respectively. These are members of the Bombardier Trax family of locos. Next up, Norway. This is Marienborg Works, just outside Trondheim, where a pair of Class 93 DMUs can be seen. These are part of the Bombardier Talent family of trains built in the early 2000s. In front of them is a stored Class 92 DMU. These units were withdrawn a few years ago, having been built in the mid-1980s. On the Traverser is a Type B7 coach. These are used on the long-distance local haul trains to and from Trondheim. Also on the depot are two examples of CargoNet's motive power, Norway's largest freight operator. This is an ED159, a Stadler Eurojoule, and this is a CD312, a Vossler Euro 4000, one of 6 currently in CargoNet's books. This is Munkvoll on the Trondheim tram, where TT Class 8 Set 94 is seen arriving. Munkvoll is also the home of the Heritage Fleet, of which some examples can be seen here. The route uses meter gauge track, which is commonplace on continental tramway systems. The Trondheim tramway system is the most northerly tramway in the world. This is Mulirane on the Nordlandsbanen, the line from Trondheim to Bodø. CargoNet CD312, number 31206, is seen departing south towards Trondheim with an intermodal service. And finally from Norway, this is Narvik, the most northerly terminus in the country. There is no line to the south from here, the only route is into Sweden, so naturally all trains which serve this station are Swedish, such as this Class RC6, number 1331, arriving on the sleeper from Stockholm. These locos were built in the 1980s, and the examples on this train are in a pool of 14 locos leased to Swedish Railways for the Far North sleeper services. Next, we move to Finland, specifically to Rovaniemi. This is a Class DV12, number 2648, one of 192 built between 1963 and 1984. It's seen here shunting the loaded double-deck car transporter wagons onto the back of the overnight train to Helsinki. A short while later, the same loco hauls a long rake of loaded log wagons into the yard adjacent to the station. The traction for the overnight train to the capital is SR3 number 3306, another member of the very extensive Siemens Vectron family. There are currently 83 of these in traffic and are the only Vectron design built for the Finnish 5-foot broad gauge. The final shot from the continent sees CFL Class 4000, number 4008, depart from Luxembourg with a stopping service to Athus, just across the border in Belgium.
So it's back to the UK again now. On the 22nd of July at Burbage Common near Hinckley, 66754 is seen at the head of 4L13 from Hams Hall to Felixstowe. Heading in the opposite direction, 66785 passed with 6G16 from Cliff Hill Stud Farm to Bescot with a ballast train.
On the 24th of July, at Hag Lane near Gascoigne Wood, we see a freshly painted 69016 with a single wagon working 6N71 from Doncaster up Decoy to Tyne sorting sidings. 91111 is at Moat Hills level crossing with 1D05 from King's Cross to Leeds on the 26th of July. (323-205) is seen at the end of its journey from Manchester Piccadilly at Hadfield on the former Woodhead route and would work 2G50 back to Manchester Piccadilly a few minutes later. The date was the 27th of July, and later that same day, 82211 and 91101 are seen arriving into Bradford Forster Square with 1D17 from King's Cross. closure of Huddersfield for the Transpennine route upgrade works meant that some of the Liverpool to Drax services were diverted across the Pennines via the Hope Valley, then on to Doncaster. We see one such service on the 4th of August, 6E17, worked by 66775, which went via Joan Croft and Askern to get to Drax. (66129) is seen at Thorpe Marsh working 6N38 from Scunthorpe to Tees Yard, conveying portions for both Lackenby and Skinninggrove on the 10th of August. We then moved to Cotton Power Station on the 14th of August. The 8 cooling towers were demolished at the same time, setting a new world record.
Fine, but you can't 100% guarantee she will be.
No, probably wouldn't be fine then.
No, so
I know my dog just doesn't play.
At Marsden on the 15th of August, 66787 is seen passing with 6E09 from Liverpool to Drax. At Nottingley on the 19th of August, 66122 passes through with 6D19 from Drax to Milford. The train would then eventually continue on to Appleford. Early on the morning of the 26th of August, the rumble of Class 70s could clearly be heard through the western part of the Peak District. This was the day after the late August bank holiday, during which the wagons used on the services out of Dowlow had been stored at Guidebridge Yard. The decision was made to move the wagons back to Dowlow in one go, resulting in this jumbo train seen at Coombs near Chapel on Le Frith. 70020 and 70008 are providing the power up front with a mixture of 44 MWA and JNA wagons and 66607 dead in tow on the rear. Still on the 26th of August, at Beeston, 66061 is seen working 6E01 from Towton to Boston Sleaford sidings. This shot was taken from Pepper Road Bridge in Leeds, looking towards Midland Road Depot with Hunslet Yard on the left. 7810 can be seen working 6S29 from Hunslet to Oxwell Mains on the 6th of September. Later, at Stores Lane on the Asken branch, 70016 is seen working a new service, which was 4Z17 from Hope Earl Sidings to Drax to load with coal ash for Hope Cement Works. 66-200 can be seen with its new Railway 200 livery at North Allerton, working 6E26 from Knowsley to Wilton on the 13th of September. On the 15th of September, 66433 is seen passing Door Lane at speed, with 4N51 from Doncaster Eyeport to Tees Dock. On the 18th of September, there was an open day at Gascoigne Wood. The sidings for the former coal mine have now been repurposed for the storage and maintenance of units, as well as a gypsum unloading facility. A number of locomotives have been brought in especially for the open day, including 66027, 66502 and brand new 93004, which we take a detailed look around. At Joan Croft, on the 19th of September, 66783 is seen working 6Z90 from Heaton Lodge to Doncaster up Decoy. The work going on at Heaton Lodge at this time was another part of the Transpennine route upgrade. We moved the next day to a very wet Doncaster station. 43060 and 43159 are working a 125 group charter from the open day at Heaton to Derby. The service ran as 1Z60 and the Heaton open day was one of a number of events held during 2025 for the Railway 200 celebrations. Moving north, we visit the Forth Bridge and see 43137 and 43132 working 1A87 from Edinburgh to Aberdeen on the 21st of September. The next day, we see 68006 at Dingwall on a route learner, which was 0Z75 from Inverness to Georgemas Junction. And now for another event from the Railway 200 celebrations that took place throughout 2025. This is Skerne Bridge in Darlington, and on the 27th of September, the replica of Locomotion No. 1 spent the day running across the bridge, recreating the first train that ran from Darlington to Stockton 200 years earlier, and would continue on to Stockton the following day. The museum in Hopetown, 56045 and 66710 are on display. The next day, after Locomotion No. 1 had visited Stockton, it went to Ferry Hill via the Stillington branch to be loaded onto a wagon and taken back to Darlington by road. Here we see it after it's passed Norton West Junction on the Stillington branch. It was running as 5Z05 from Eaglescliff Down Loop to Ferry Hill.
This is the line between Coventry and Leamington Spa. The location is Old Milverton, and on the 6th of October, Voyager set 220031 is seen forming 1014 from Manchester Piccadilly to Bournemouth. Later that day we visited Warwick. 68010 was propelling 1H45 from Birmingham Moor Street to London Marylebone. Working hard up the gradient, 70807 also passed with 6M50 from Westbury to Bescot.
On the 10th of October, 66126 and 66657 are seen at Stubbs Walden South with 6D12 from Lackenby to Scunthorpe. 66657 had recently been converted from 66183. That evening at Door Lane, we catch 99001 on its very first loaded test run, which was 4Q04 from Doncaster Eyeport to Miller Hill with 66757 in tow as insurance. It was followed by 66738 on 6G85 from Doncaster up Decoy to Micklefield. This is Armley Junction, which is on the west side of Leeds. 2107, 2118 and 2132 are seen working a special LSL charter. This leg was 1Z90 from York to Keighley on the 12th of October. .47714 is seen between Craighall and Newton Le Willows on the Wensleydale Railway, moving wagons in preparation for a nighttime photo charter with 33035 in tow on the 18th of October. After shunting the set around at Leyburn, we then see the train heading towards Redmire, this time with 33035 leading. Hartburn Junction in Stockton on the 27th of October, 60095 is seen heading north with 6N61 from Drax to Tyne Coal Terminal, followed by newly released 69015, still carrying its original number 56009, working 0N71 from Doncaster Down Decoy to Tyne SS. Seen on the curve between Milford and Gascoigne Wood, 37510 and 730014 are on 5Q16 from Soho to Gascoigne Wood on the 30th of October. Now for a trip to Wales. 66097 flies through Bridgend, working 6V92 from Corby to Margam on the 3rd of November. The next day at Iron Acton on the Titherington branch, 66619 is seen with 6Z42 from Titherington to Appleford. This was an additional service providing stone for HS2. Still on the 4th of November, we are treated to the unusual sight of two Class 67 hauled services passing at Newport Station. 67012 departs with 1W96 from Cardiff to Holyhead, and the late running 67029 is on 1V46 from Manchester Piccadilly to Cardiff. That same night at Cardiff Queen Street, we see 66846 and 66544 on Railhead Treatment Train 3S61, which was a Port Talbot to Stormy move via the valleys. 66544 was on hire to Colas from Freightliner. On the 5th of November at Newport again, 37884 pulls in for a scheduled stop, dragging 455735 and 455864 on 5Q76 from Wimbledon Park Depot sidings to Newport Docks for scrap. Still on the 5th of November, 82220 and 67029 arrive into Cardiff, ready to work 1W61 to Manchester Piccadilly, which we take as far as Leominster. .67012 is on 1V46 from Manchester Piccadilly to Cardiff. same night, 66622 is seen passing Cwmbran, with 6B72 from East Usk to Moreton on Lug for loading. Next we move to Water Orton on the 7th of November, starting with 43014 and 43062 on 1Q20 from London Paddington to Derby RTC. Next, 66564 passes with 4099 from Leeds to Southampton. Once a common sight at places like Nottingley, these scenes have now virtually disappeared. 66504 passes with a rake of HHA coal hoppers which had come from long-term store in Barassi Yard. They had made their way from Barassi to Hunslet the previous day, and this working was 6D66 from Hunslet to Shirebrook, where the running gear from these wagons would be used to build new wagons. The date was the 20th of November. 66190 can also be seen shunting wagons in Nottingley Depot. Working another of the new services from Hope to Drax, 70011 is seen near Norton on the Asken line on the 22nd of November with 4E02 from Hope to Drax. A little further north, on a very sunny 25th of November, 66181 is seen near Nottingley South Junction with 4R51 from Drax to Immingham. On the 26th of November, at Hillam Gates, we catch 70014 on a test run, working 0G01 from Leeds Barm Road to Leeds Barm Road via Milford. Closely followed by 66186 on 4K78 from Milford to Nottingley TMD. Finally, we see 37501 dragging 730013 on 5Q16 from Soho to Gascoigne Wood. On a dull 1st of December, 66199 is seen at Picton working 6D12 from Lackenby to Scunthorpe. On the 2nd of December, the weather was in complete contrast from the previous day. At Nottingley, 60026 is seen working 6N61 from Drax to Tyne Coal Terminal.
Now for a very rainy trip to the Fens on the 4th of December. We began at Three Horseshoes, where we saw 69002 working 6E86 from Middleton Towers to Monk Breton. At Stony, 66607 passed us, with 6Z49 from Barham to March. The train would then change head codes and work forward to Tunstead as 6E68. A little further along the line, towards Ely, is Mainey. 66102 worked 6L42 from Mount Sorrel to Barham. In the opposite direction, 66622 was working 4M31 from Brandon to Dowlow.
On the 8th of December, 43301 and 43303 are seen passing Nottingley with 1Q60 from Derby RTC to Gascoigne Wood. This is the South Yorkshire Joint Railway at Wilsick Road near Tick Hill. This is another brand new service to Hope, this time from Maltby. 70011 is seen working the inaugural loaded train from Maltby, conveying coal ash, which had been brought into Maltby by road after being excavated from the site at Ratcliffe Power Station. As the power station was under demolition, no rail movements were allowed on site, hence the need to bring the product to Maltby. The date was the 15th of December and the working was 6M06 from Maltby Colliery to Hope Earl Sidings. We finish at Bedworth near Coventry on the 27th of December with 196010 working 2G81, the 1340 from Leamington Spa to Nuneaton.